Okay. All right. So we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everybody. Really appreciate it. Again, my name is Phil Poekert. I'm director of the Lastinger Center. We are part of both the Math Nation as well as the Flamingo Learning Platform, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. This is a more nascent effort at the Lastinger Center. We have built out a professional learning management system. And so the users that are on the other end of the Flamingo platform are teachers, and those teachers are either early childhood teachers working with infants, toddlers, or preschoolers, and that's the vast majority of our user base at the moment, as well as K through 12 teachers, in particular early literacy teachers in K through 3 classrooms. We have some emerging efforts there, and one other piece around school safety that I'll tell you a little bit more about it. In the time that I have, I'm going to just do a quick agenda that I'll tell you about the platform. I'm going to tell you about the courses that are on the platform so you understand those pieces, as well as some existing research, as well as some plans for some future research. And so Flamingo was launched at the beginning of last year in 2019. And so it is developed as a mobile-first social learning and professional development system. And it's working to target teachers, coaches, facilitators, other educational professionals, which would be center directors and childcare programs, principals and assistant principals in schools, district administrators, so that they would have access to the system to engage with each other and with content that is structured. We wanted to make this a one-stop hub so that they have high-quality coursework, they have additional complementary and supplementary resources, that they have supports from one another, that they have the opportunity to connect through networks that really are designed to improve teacher knowledge, teacher practice, and help them to advance their careers by completing competency-aligned and credential-based professional development. It's of course available 24/7 like most educational technology platforms, and we try to allow them the opportunity to access things at their own time, because childcare workers in particular are often working very late in the day and only have time maybe after their own children are in bed or during nap times in order to be able to access these things. So we try to make this as flexible and user-friendly as possible, and that's where most of our development efforts to date have focused. And now we're turning our attention back internally to think about how we build out the infrastructure to allow for more data science work to go on and to advance our research agenda. So to give you a sense of what we did in terms of designing that user interface, we really focused on trying to create this community-based social learning system. So like many social media platforms, it's built around a central feed, and that feed is populated as new resources are added into the system by the instructors or by the users. That feed also has the opportunity for users to like materials, to comment on them, to save them to their own resource library. And so there's a resource management system that's built into it so that they can exchange resources and save resources that they're able to access easily from the coursework that they're taking, and also from the groups in which they're a member. In addition to those two pieces, it also is a learning management system and a teaching management system. So it offers both synchronous instructor-led courses as well as asynchronous self-directed online courses that are built usually around state competencies that define the knowledge and skill that these educators need to have in the classrooms where they're working, or for advanced credentials that they're pursuing. In addition to that, we built in a video annotation tool that allows for coaching directly to teachers when teachers are submitting evidence of their instructional practice as an example of what they were able to do as a result of the course content. Or we also do work in preparing instructional coaches. And so we have them video coaching sessions where they're providing feedback to teachers, and then we have reviewers provide feedback to the coaches about their coaching techniques using that video annotation tool, which provides time-stamped, rubric-aligned commentary to the teachers around those video submissions. And then finally, because it's aligned with state competencies and both state and national credentials, say like the child development associates that lead childcare teachers need to have, we've created a learning goal management tool, which allows us to build in a program of study that can be made up of multiple learning objects, including courses and other modules, that as teachers finish them, they make progress along their overall goal of getting that credential. And so we can give them progress updates as to how they're doing within keeping track on their course, as well as how they're doing in terms of their progress on the overall achievement of the credential. Moving forward, we're planning to add some additional coaching supports to the platform, which would allow for video conferencing like this that expands the possibilities of what coaches are able to do in their interactions with teachers, as well as an instant messaging feature so that we could be able to allow for just easier chats within the platform among users. And then using the research that I'll be talking about a little bit later, what we're trying to work towards is towards a personalized algorithm that allows for professional development resources to be added into the feed and added into the learning goal management system that can be suggested to users based upon what we know about them as a user, their previous usage, and what their ultimate goals are and in their learning. And so moving forward a little bit beyond the Flamingo platform and what features it offers, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the course content that it's providing. And so within our early learning work, we've created a statewide professional development system. Clearly it's active here in the state of Florida, but we're also in 5 other states around the country, including a recent development that we're launching in Massachusetts. And what we do with this is we've created this series of professional development courses. They're aligned with the research on child development. They are also aligned with the competencies that each states require for teachers to achieve those credentials. We've also been able to articulate it, at least in some initial ways, with some college credit opportunities that would allow teachers to not only achieve those CDA credentials or specializations within the state, but also pursue potentially the initial pathway towards an associate's degree. Built on top of those online courses, we've also provided implementation support through its individualized live support that teachers receive, coaching, or they work within a community of practice of local educators. We have trained and certified those coaches to be able to provide that kind of feedback to teachers. And when we've really, as I'll allude to later, when we've combined the coaching with the online coursework, we've been able to demonstrate impacts on teacher-child interactions, which is the outcome data or the quality metric within early childhood classrooms. It's the classroom assessment scoring system that's used here in the state of Florida and many other states as a measure of program quality. And we've been able to see that, we think, because we've taken a competency-based approach to professional development, which doesn't just require teachers to participate in professional development that might be measured in hours or modules, but we actually ask them to submit evidence that they've done something with those practices, and we ask them to take pre and post tests that demonstrate their growth in knowledge. So they're able to show both knowledge and skill gains on this in the early learning work. A similar approach is taken within our literacy work, and so the literacy matrix is based around the big 5 of the science of reading. So that's the phonological awareness, decoding, fluency, comprehension, and vocabulary. And so those are aligned with that research base, leads into the Florida reading endorsement. Many other states require similar endorsements or credentials in order for teachers to be able to work in early literacy classrooms, K through 3 classrooms. In Florida, anybody who's providing intervention supports in those classrooms is required to have at least a reading endorsement, if not a reading certificate. And so we've worked to make sure that our system allows teachers to achieve that credential. They are doing so, again, in a competency-based approach where they're taking these knowledge assessments as well as submitting artifacts that show that they're planning differently and that they're implementing these strategies with their students. And then we provide our expert reviewers that we've trained according to the requirements of the state, our arrangements with them, and also established integrated reliability among them. We provide individualized feedback to those teachers on their submissions. And they're able to do this completely online, so they don't have to come to the university or they don't have to go to their district office in order to participate in this professional development. It's something that they can do more conveniently from their own homes, which is especially pertinent at the time we are living in. In addition to the early learning and literacy work, we've also had some work around school safety. We've been working with a researcher that's based at the University of North Carolina, and we've worked with her and some of her collaborators to develop professional development resources, both for school resource officers, and more recently, we're developing some materials for teachers in trying to create safe school environments, trying to increase knowledge of things like trauma-informed practices, as well as restorative justice and other things that help teachers and school resource officers and other educational professionals to enhance school safety and increase the learning within those environments. Excuse me. The user base that we've had to date since we launched in 2019, we've had just short of 25,000 total users. Of those, just short of 20,000 of them are still active within the system in some way. And we've had about 5,000 that are currently inactive since their initial work with us. Of those, as I said, the early learning work is the vast percentage of our overall user base. 93% of them are in early learning, 4%, but a growing percent within literacy. We've just completed our first full pilot of the literacy matrix this year and are planning for a larger launch with a more significant number of users in the literacy work coming in the fall. So we'll be growing that database. And then we're still building out some of the school safety and coaching materials. So that's a small and will be growing later, but not as earnestly as the other two efforts at the moment. In terms of the kinds of profile data that we collect, this is the user profile data that we're collecting at the moment, actively seeking feedback on other elements that can be added to that user profile that allow us to create a richer user profile that then could be used within data science and machine learning algorithms later. But we do get a sense of their name, their bio, what their role is, their language preferences, ethnicity, their gender compensation, where they work, etc. And so we do have a sense of some of that demographic data, which feeds into the overall data that we currently have available in terms of the demographics. In addition, as I've made mention to, we're collecting pre and post-test knowledge assessments in each of the courses at the beginning and end of them. We've also been able to collect a number of surveys of feedback that they provide about the modules, their experiences within it, the technology platform, etc. We've also built out some SCORM packages within the system that are interactive media elements. That's how we've done a lot of our survey collection, but we've also built out some of those interactive media elements, and those things also log some data in terms of how usage occurs. Beyond that, within the platform, it's not as robust as we'd like it to be, but at the moment, we've got Google Analytics for clickstream data that allow us to have some sense of the usage that's going on. But as I said, I want to make sure that we're collecting and instrumenting the platform more, and welcome to feedback on how we best do that for research purposes. In terms of the research that we've done to date, largely it's been focused on efficacy, and so we've been able to demonstrate effectiveness of the platform. So where we've been able to do our most robust evaluations of the early learning platform has been within the state of Florida. And so we had an evaluation within Florida's Performance Funding Pilot Project. That's what the ELPFP stands for. We had 578 providers, so childcare programs, that had about 3,500 teachers who served about 19,000 children. And in that, what we saw were significant improvements in provider quality as measured by the classroom assessment scoring system. The way that this system works, the performance funding pilot, is that those providers are broken down into tiers. And what we saw is across each of the tiers 1, 2, and 3, we saw a significant percentage of those programs improve their overall program quality from year 3 to year 4. And so we're really excited about seeing those improvements in class scores. Additionally, we saw some pretty significant knowledge gains among teachers who participated in our literacy matrix professional development. So this was a report that we just recently furnished to our state. Of the 463 teachers across the school districts that are named there that did work between November and now, we saw an average of 59% growth from pre to post test. So an average initial score of 57% mastery, an average post score of 90%, which is an effect size of almost 2.5. And so pretty significant increases in teacher knowledge. And we've also been able to do some initial work in establishing student outcomes on the literacy matrix, though our state doesn't have a statewide progress monitoring system in K through 3. So we're in the midst of signing some MOUs right now to be able to get access to districts' progress monitoring data to be able to look at the impact on students within those districts' classrooms. So those are some of the initial efficacy work that we've been able to do. Moving forward, what we'd like to do is start doing some data mining and data science work that would allow us to understand some of the connections that we should see within between the user profiles the usage patterns, and then ultimately these outcomes of interest that we're most curious about, which are teacher and student or child outcomes in early learning classrooms. And so what we'd like to be able to do is utilize our understanding of those connection points to build out a statistical model that could be incorporated as an algorithm that would be able to provide personalized feedback and recommendations to teachers. And so that's what we want to use big data in order to advance, in order to be able to provide some of that feedback to teachers. And so we actually in the fall put out an RFP. We got about 10 responses. We're beginning some efforts in partnerships in order to be able to grow some of that predictive analysis research. And then we do have a goal moving forward of becoming a platform that would have as many as 100 research projects going on simultaneously. So imagine that in addition to the user interface and the admin interface, we'd build out a researcher interface so that researchers would be able to access data sets as well as begin to propose some experiments within it in order to see what kinds of experimentation might lead to accelerated learner outcomes. And so that's what I had to say, and I see that we might be a little short on time before we need to go back, so I'll stop here and just allow for any comments or questions. But thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thanks, Phil. I think Christy just sent us a message. We have about 10 minutes left for questions. And oh, I think we already got a question from Art. Do you expand to adult literacy and adult literacy centers?
At the moment, we haven't targeted adult literacy or adult literacy centers, so we've been trying to focus our efforts on the early literacy piece, and in order to be able to get that off the ground robustly. We've been asked that question before, even also been asked to do adult literacy within the prison system, where we've seen a significant number of struggling readers. And so it's certainly something that we'd like to explore in the future, but we wanted to get the program, meaning like the content of the system, in a really good shape. And as I said, we just finished our first full implementation of the literacy matrix this year. And so we're going to be refining that launch over the course of the coming year. And then perhaps we could begin expanding after that. But wanted to make sure we focused our effort there.
We've got another question.
Sure. Okay, so Hijay, in terms of how we'd engage the data scientists, what I'm imagining is that we'd actually be able to invite data scientists who are interested in exploring questions around the improvement of teacher and student outcomes. And so we would like to leave it open-ended in terms of which research questions specifically those researchers might want to propose. And then thinking through a model of engagement where we're trying to build out that research interface that would allow you to kind of access the system to be able to propose an experiment of your own, and then we would find a way to work with you to be able to create the data sharing agreements, IRB protocols that would be necessary. And so that's something that's still kind of emerging at the moment, but we imagine that you'd be able to propose your own research questions within the system. That's what we'd like to do moving forward.
Yeah, got another question.
So is the platform currently enabled to do experimentation like A/B testing of content? At the moment, it's not. So it's not yet instrumented in that way. It's really, at the moment, just trying to think about those connections between, as I said, user profile, usage patterns, and then ultimately student outcome data. We could imagine getting to the point where we would do this rapid cycle experimentation. But at the moment, the platform is not enabled to be able to do that, as I know that some of the other panelists have built out their platforms there. And then, what's this next one?
Yeah, Ben have a question.
No, Ben, I'd love to hear more if you could say a word about Alyssa Wise's work.
I think I may read Alicia White's that piece. It's about probably like mining their comments to gain some insights to general, like, you know, how the PD works.
Yeah, and she's shown it at a fascinating scale. Yeah, things like being able to see how topics appear and how topics change in learners' reflections. So a good example is looking at dental professionals during their learning process. They start to use more terms like student-centric or patient-centric, I should have said, and talk more about the patient experience, which is their evidence of growth. But Alyssa's a spectacularly accessible person. She's at NYU, and I'm sure that if you reached out to her, she'd be able to give you some cool pointers.
Awesome. Yeah, so I mean that is something that the platform is instrumented to be able to do, because we are able to collect submissions from users. We have the ability to create fillable forms that we can create a report that just produces everything that a user has cataloged throughout an entire course. And so all we would need to do is to be able to structure that in a way that says, like, we're going to create a user log, and many of the courses already have that built in. Right, where it's saying, like, over the course of this course, over the course of the course, we're actually going to have you submit in either a diary or a log, and so we would be able to mine that, and that'd be an interesting thing to do. So that'd be a research question that we could actually explore with the system's current capacity. Art, could you just explain to me, use the communication facilities? What do you mean?
I thought that you wanted a learning community to build, teachers communicating with each other, and in MOOCs, the whole MOOC world, people didn't use it a lot. But I'm wondering if you have data on ways you can engage instructors to do that, because that's so important.
I mean, certainly we'd have numbers in terms of how often the teachers use the communication capabilities of the platform, and because it's a part of their progress through the course, we've seen it be pretty robust. What I think might be interesting to look at is their interactions with the feed, right, which is not necessarily a required part of their progress through the course. And I wonder what kind of, if the data there, I haven't actually asked that question. I wonder if the data there would correlate with what you're alluding to in MOOCs, right? And then thinking through, would there be ways in which we could increase the interactivity of teachers with the feed that helps them to improve their knowledge and practice? That's an interesting question. But yeah, within the courses, we've seen quite a bit of interaction with teachers using various discussions and submissions because it's required, essentially.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Actually, I have a question for Phil. So you mentioned that Flamingo is a learning management system and also a teaching management system. So, and also, is it like Flamingo can facilitate like real-time learning, or it's more like community-based? Like, they can asynchronous talk and, work through some self-paced courses, or is it like, they have to do like face-to-face classes, online classes? I think you are muted, Phil.
So it's both, Wan Li, and so we have a large number of users that are doing these asynchronous modules, but they're very short. So whereas a synchronous course is going to be something like 20 hours of time that a teacher is going to take to go through it, the asynchronous modules are something like half an hour or an hour in order to get through them, and so that's something that hasn't really built out too much yet. So.
I got another question from Heiji.
Have you had provision to open up this? So Heiji, we're actively cultivating that at the moment, and so that's something that we're seeking investment on right now. We've got some initial investments in order to be able to get some of the data science work off the ground with the existing data set, and we're in conversations with some foundations in order to be able to get that investment that would open up the researcher-facing interface So that's something that's a future development plan at the moment.
Any other questions? So from your presentation, is it like for the Flamingo already collecting log data already, or is mainly like pre and post test and some like discussion forums?
It does have some log data, so it spits out, so we're collecting through Google Analytics. We're also, through SCORM packages, we're collecting a decent amount of log data in terms of user interactivity. One of the things we'd like to do moving forward, again, is to build out some of the further instrumentation to make sure that we have the log data that's going to be useful to data scientists to understand interaction and engagement within the platform, so we can create models around that.
Thanks.
Well, I certainly welcome any of you to contact me in order to continue the conversation. I appreciate your time and attention in learning more about the Lastinger Center's Flamingo platform, and thank you very much for attending this session. So I guess we'll be back in the main session momentarily, and I will see you in there. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, Phil. Thanks, everyone.